Hi, my name is Naima, and you are listening to the Service is Power podcast, hosted by my Uncle Al. He's the best.
There she goes again. Thank you so much, Naima, for opening up the show for us. I hear that she's having an incredible year so far. And we hope that 2019 is working out for you as well, servant leader. As a matter of fact, speaking of working out, Yum Butter desires for us to be as healthy as we possibly can going into 2019. Yum Butter churns mouth-rocking, world-changing nut butters in small batches that help fuel your dream and everyday adventure. They only use the highest quality organic nuts, seeds, and superfoods in their potions. Their revolutionary, go-anywhere resealable pouches are the ideal grab-and-go for work, the gym, or trial. On top of that, they have a world-changing mission. When you buy Yum Butter, you feed a child in need through their Buy One, Feed One business model. They also show their dedication to Mother Earth through their certified B Corporation. Servant Leader, is going to be a great idea this year to go over to yumbutter.com. Check those guys out. Check out the food. Check out the way that they're doing nutrition. It's going to help us be the best servant leader we possibly can be, having the energy to serve them in the deepest and the hardest areas when life starts to get rough and rocky for us and them. We want to be as healthy as possible, taking care of ourselves. So go over to Yum Butter. Check those guys out. Tell them Lyle sent you. Now, that's not just an ad there, servant leader. We want to know exactly how things are going for you. We want you to have a happy and healthy 2019. So would you do us a favor and connect with us? Would you leave a message? Would you leave a note wherever you're listening to this podcast at? Would you hit us up at hello@servicespower.org? Let us know how the podcast is doing for you. Would you let us know what you're thinking, what you're dealing with, what your struggles are, and what your successes have been? We would love to hear some success stories. If there's something being said on the podcast that's helping you out, or if it's connected to a story in somebody else's life, we want to hear your story. Would you reach out to us? We want to have 100,000 subscribers. Not that we could beat our chest or we can pat ourselves on the back, but we need to have 100,000 conversations that talk about the world changers servant leaders are and can be, the influencers that we are, and the impact that we're having in the lives of the people that we serve. We want to hear from you. We want to talk to you. It is so good for us to be in a position that we can give back. And sometimes we're going to have to get ahead. We're going to have to talk about what we're doing, which is exactly what this podcast episode is going to be about. I'm so intrigued by this particular episode. We've got Joon Han with us, and there are certain ways that we can think and that we can respond to behaviors around us in our lives. There are different ways that we can conceptualize how to become a great servant leader. And there are going to be a couple of things that we believe are going to be so interesting to put in our toolbox when we encounter different types of people that will allow us to continue to be strong and vibrant servant leaders, making sure that we're doing the best for others. And sometimes we have to be more equipped, more successful, and we have to grow more. And so this episode is about that. He's going to talk about a really neat concept called competitive buoyancy. I think it's so cool. Can't wait for you guys to jump into this episode. Lead strategist Joon Han is the author and TEDx speaker of Get Ahead by Giving Back. And he gets to interact with thousands of entrepreneurs a year through workshops, conferences, podcasts, and mentoring relationships, helping smart business owners grow from being busy to very effective. His passion is to help at least 10,000 entrepreneurs a year to change the world with their accelerated success. Since retiring from active client work years ago, Joon mentors as many social entrepreneurs as he can fit into his schedule these days. Although he leads 5 different companies and 3 nonprofit organizations, he gladly spends most of his time as the lead parent of his family. Joon's newest company is awesomeguests.com, and it is going to be so cool to hear what Joon has to say in this podcast episode. Once again, we're calling it Getting Ahead by Giving Back. Let's go. Welcome back to the Services Power Podcast, ladies and gentlemen, servant leaders. I am so stoked to have Joon Han on this thing. He gave this incredible TED Talk on getting ahead by giving back. He wrote a book on it as well. Joon just jumped in my life and he's already rocked it and rolled it. I think this is going to be somebody I know I'm going to be hanging out with. And I know as you guys listen to this podcast, you guys are going to be hanging out with him too. Joon, how in the world are you?
Man, I'm great, dude. Here in San Diego, we got no complaints, man. It's the way it is every day.
It's funny. You're in San Diego. It is ice cold here in Jersey. I mean, literally, they told us that the temperature high today was 10. Hey, Joon, would you tell our listeners who you are, what you got going on, what you're all about? Can you introduce yourself a little bit to our listeners?
Yeah, man. I'm your classic serial entrepreneur. I lead 5 different companies. I lead 2 different nonprofits. The truth is, if you looked at my actual weekly schedule, I do a lot of typical lead parent stuff, right? I drive my kids to school. I'm on 2 different PTAs. I do all the field trips. I do all the grocery shopping. I do all the cooking. I don't do hardly any cleaning around the house, which is probably a bummer for my wife and stuff. I do a lot of I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I can do things that matter most to me. My parents came over as immigrants from Korea, and between the 2 of them, they had 5 different jobs. So they would have loved to be able to take me to school or do field trips and stuff like that. So this is my way of kind of honoring their sacrifice by living the life I feel like that they would have wanted to live. They're still around, but this is the way that they would have loved to be around for their kids. So I'm doing it for my kids. Like I said, I do the TED Talk, but that's mostly I speak around the world on Get Ahead by Giving Back. And we could talk about it a little bit later, but I also just built a platform called Awesome Guests because I really feel like there needs to be some more diverse voices in new media, and new media is blowing up, like podcasts like yours and stuff like that. And so we just wanted to build an easier way for people to kind of showcase themselves. So yeah, I'm excited. Let me just tell you what, I'm really thankful. I got to listen to a whole bunch of episodes of your show before getting on. I'm super thankful for your mission and passion, and obviously more important than that, your whole team. What you guys are about is pretty phenomenal. So thanks for letting me be a part of the show, dude.
We're definitely going to be talking about awesome guests. I know we have an initial question we want to ask, and I'm going to definitely get to it. But listen, I want to jump in talking about your parents and their situation. You're talking about honoring their sacrifice. On this podcast, we have individuals who live life around a college student. Some of those individuals are parents, and some of them are just people who are influential. Can you talk about the influence your parents had on you as you honor their sacrifice and how that has allowed you to be the person you are right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think with a lot of, and this is probably true for anyone whose parents came from a kind of an old school kind of country is, immigrant parents don't show love by saying they love you. They're not super warm and cuddly. And the way they show that they love you is they basically, canceled all of their legacy in their home country. And they came over here to mostly get treated like crap for the most part, so that their kids can become doctors and lawyers or engineers or very successful, whatever. And so, growing up, you feel like, man, do my parents, they're not very as affectionate or they're not as supportive. I remember when I was in college, the first week, some of my friends were like, hey, Joon, we're going to go somewhere for a study break. And I was like, what's a study break? And they're like, so you don't get burnt out. What's burnt out? My immigrant parents, like I said, they work 5 jobs. There's no such thing as getting burnt out. I think, starting that first year in college, you realize man, how is it? I don't think I've been giving my parents enough credit for the ways that they actually did love me. Can you imagine being successful in your own country and having some kind of reputation or credibility and even a certain amount of resources and, sway in the community. And then you leave to go to a country where they're going to make fun of you. Even if your English is good, your accent's going to be there. You're not going to look like most people. It's going to be hard to fit in, and you're going to have to sacrifice all that. You're going to have to eat a whole generation's worth of just garbage so that your kids can hopefully do something great. In college is when it started dawning on me oh, I need to give more respect to my parents for the kind of the sacrifices they did make for me, make me work harder and things like that. So.
Well, thanks so much for that story. That's really cool. And clearly you've gotten ahead and you've given back. Can you tell us a bit about the passion that you have behind writing that book and what it's all about?
Lyle, I'll just tell you, man, it was born out of necessity. So I realized, when I got out of college, I worked for some really great organizations. But like a lot of people, especially, your listeners that are in young adults or college age, in your lifetime, you're going to have more bad bosses than good bosses, and the reason I know this is there's 20,000 books on management, and they all exist because someone doesn't know how to do their job. And so, I had a string of like 3 or 4 kind of like not very good supervisors and stuff. And my parents were like, yeah, eventually you're probably gonna have to run your own show. And so when it dawned on me that I wanted to be my own boss, it took me like another 3 years to have the courage to do that. It was just kind of scary to think about doing that. Even though I had the temperament for it and probably the skill set, I just like the insecurity of like, oh, can I do this? Can I feed my family? At the time, we're expecting our 3rd kid. Can I feed my family off of something that I'm just going to have to earn on my own? And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And also, my wife and I, we continue to support all these causes that great things people are doing all over the world. And so if you're an entrepreneur, there's no ceiling on how much money you can make. If you work for somebody else, you do a good job, they give you a raise or they don't. But, as an entrepreneur, if you're just killing a business by yourself, there's no limit to what you can do. So I definitely knew I wanted to do that. As you survey the business world is like, what they say. It's exactly what people think. It's like a dog, Shark Tank kind of world, And so I'm a strategist. And strategy, all that means is for people that kind of like want to demystify that word. Strategy just means like, what's the best way for you to do something based on who you are? Right. It's like, there's more than one way to skin a cat or all that kind of stuff. So it's like, I said, I want to be a successful entrepreneur, but the business world is like built for people that are like scorched earth, kind of like stab each other in the back, political kind of people. And I'm not that guy. So I was like, but I want to be a successful entrepreneur, but how do I do it then if I'm not built that way? Like, even if if the only option to be a successful business person is to be like a backstabbing kind of person, I think like you and I, Lyle, we could learn to do that. But the reality is because it's not really who we are, we're never going to be the best at it. Does that make sense? Like if it's not who you are, you can get good at it, but you can't be the best, right? So it really needs to be a way that you do things. So I ended up doing all this research. I'm a big science guy. So I ended up doing all this research going, is there another way to be successful in business? It turns out like the secrets behind a company like Coca-Cola or like a guys like Warren Buffett or, like Bill Gates, these name brand kind of global icons, the way they got there, it's not publicized, but the way they got there was being very generous people. And I think the biggest difference between like just people who like to do good things versus I think generous like leaders is that generous leaders understand that there's a difference between nice and generous. Like if you're nice, you're never going to make a difference in this world. If you're just a nice person that has a hard time saying no or is going to avoid conflict, you're not a big fan of giving people tough love. If you're just a nice person, you're going to go along to get along. And you're not really going to do anything significant in this life. But generosity, like I'm a very generous person, but I think people who know me well wouldn't necessarily say Joon's a nice guy, but I think they'll always say he's the most generous guy they know. So there's a difference. So I did all this research and put it all together in that book. It's coming out later this year, but like you said, the TED Talk's been up for about almost 5-6 years now. But yeah, so that was the genesis of it. I just needed to figure out how can a guy like me who wants to do things the right way, I do care about the way to do things, the end just doesn't justify the means. How can someone like me be successful in business? So I really just wrote something that I wish I had for myself.
Servant leaders, I hope you hear the bombs that Joon is dropping on us right now. He said that there's a difference between being nice and being generous. It's the same way we've been talking about the difference between doing nice things and being a servant leader. Because servant leaders are just like generous people. As we heard Joon say, generous people are significant. We all know the John Maxwell quote that successful people can be significant, but significant people are always successful. Servant leader, whatever you're doing, wherever you are right now in life, you want to continue this journey, this path on servant leadership, because as you serve well, not just do nice things, but as you're generous with your life, you're going to find yourself being much more significant and much more of a big time player in the lives of the people that you serve, that you work around, that you live with, that are in your community. Joon, you talk about in your TED Talk and going to be coming up in your book, this whole idea of competitive buoyancy. I love it. Could you explain to our listeners what competitive buoyancy is and how it applies to servant leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, as I was doing all the research for this book, I needed to find why is it that someone like Warren Buffett can become successful through generosity. And in his industry is like a super cutthroat industry. It's not for the weak of heart or, people who don't have backbone and things like that. And so how can a guy like him succeed? And so, one of the truths of life is that every single one of us that's listening to this show, and you and I, Lyle, we all prefer to do things or help out people or do business with people we like, trust, and respect. It's in that order. Like you like someone, then you could trust them. If you trust someone, you can start to respect them, right? And so it doesn't matter who you are, all over the world, people prefer to do that. things with people they like, trust, and respect. So then I was looking at like, there's a game of Monopoly. It's a very competitive real estate game. Real estate tycoons train their kids on this game when they're like little and stuff like that. But they actually have like a world championship tournament for this kind of thing. This is where I started to understand this phenomenon called competitive buoyancy, is that everyone in Monopoly, like basically if you're a pro level player, you kind of all play the same rules. Like you want to get the orange row as first as possible because that's most likely where people are going to land. So whoever wins that Monopoly on the orange row is most likely going to get a head start. But basically, it's exactly like any kind of tournament. People are cutthroat. The best players win. And towards the end, you get the last group, right? The last table for the tournament. And then what ends up happening is, as people start to get winnowed down to who the winner is going to be, Monopoly is an interesting game. When you start to know that you're not going to win, there's things you can do that are not against the rules for you to help someone else on your way out. Lyle, I like the way you played the game. You cut me a deal on rent one time in the early round. You were fair on a deal. So I have my choice to sell my properties either to you or to this other guy. This other guy is like an asshat. I don't like him, so I'm not going to win this game. Like someone has to win this game. And if I have some say in the matter, I'm going to make sure it's you and not this other guy. Right. So that's competitive buoyancy. And what happens in real life is that you can become the best at something. The quickest way to be best at something is like scorched earth, just like kill people, step on their backs and all that kind of stuff and get to the top. But what happens is when you get to the top, you have this whole trail of all these people that you royally pissed off. Right. And so now they have like vendettas and they will spend every waking hour trying to take you down. Now, the difference is if you got to the top, because someone has to be at the top, and everyone in like business and success, they know this, like someone has to be the best. But who do I want to be the best? Do I want it to be someone that's overbearing and that stabbed us on the back? Or is it someone like you, Lyle, that's like, you know what? You did it the right way. So someone has to be first. If it's not going to be me, I really want it to be you, right? And then when you're on top, because of the way you conduct yourself and stuff like, I'm not spending every waking hour trying to take you down, right? So what ends up happening is your so-called competitors are kind of your allies. They're like, you know what? No. I like Lyle being on top. Like if someone's going to be number one, I'd rather be that guy than the other dude. Right. And so that's in essence competitive buoyancy. And you can see it in all kinds of things. It's like when on teams, when people are voting for captains, right? There's a lot of honor in that. But who are you going to vote as your captain? The guy that's going to rub it in your face every day that you're not the captain, or the guy that really is a good captain that you'll bleed for? You'll go the extra mile for that team captain and things like that. So the competitive buoyancy, that tendency is you can shoot for excellence, but the way you get there is going to make a big difference on how long you stay there.
That's so good, Joon. Would you help out some people who have made mistakes on their way to the top? There are a bunch of people that are exactly like the way you just talked about. They've stepped over people, they've crushed people, and they've left a lot of people in their wake as they've gotten to the top. Could you help those individuals by giving them some advice on how to repair some of those relationships?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, dude. So I think let's just talk facts here. Like, if I screwed you over, there's a good chance I can never win you back. I mean, that's just the reality, right? Like here in America, we tend to be very forgiving. So if someone says they're sorry and something like that, I think there's a way back to that. So the reality is like there are some people, if you screw them over, they're never going to do anything to help you or work alongside you. But I think the vast majority, if you go back and go, hey, man, can I just be honest with you? I'm disappointed in the way that I handle things between us. If there's any way that we can work together, can I make you like a co-captain? Can I give you a special project? Is there something that you want to do that I can help you do to get to where you want to do and basically be their champion and advocate? Now, I would say as you're doing that, the first couple times, you kind of want to make sure you protect yourself against if they harbor ill intentions, right? Because you really don't know. Like if you and I have conflict right now, Lyle, and I say I'm sorry, and you say, oh man, I forgive you, that doesn't mean that that's true. The way we test it is the next time we interact. So like for me, I would go back, figure out a way, just have an honest conversation. I think anyone wants to be a leader. You just got to be good at having hard conversations. You don't have to like it, but you have to be good at it. Difficult conversations, because most people shy away from that kind of stuff. So you go back and say, hey, I don't want to be that kind of guy. I don't think we did it the right way. I'll tell you why I did it. And the other thing to be acknowledged of is like in just our lives in general, we all keep emotional accounts with people, just like a regular bank account. If you and I have been positive for the most part, then we can have some rough waters, but we're not going to be negative. But if you and I met today and the very first 5 or 6 interactions I'd had with you were negative, then our emotional bank account is super negative. So I need to be very pragmatic in saying, hey, if I'm down 1,000 points, I need to do 1,000 points not to win your favor, but just to be neutral. Then I got to go the extra mile to kind of win your favor back. So that's why I'm saying, like, if you just really stepped on someone or really hurt their feelings, or just, really worst case scenario, like, got someone fired, or denied them a promotion or something like that, is that you go back and go, listen, you need to do a lot to get to zero. And then you get to start over again. People don't understand how the emotional counts work. If you're negative, you got to work back to zero first, right? You don't just all of a sudden get positive. Like, whatever positive I do turn a negative account is bringing us back to neutral, which is still, fair place to start.
Servant leaders, I hope you hear the advice that Joon has given us. It is really good stuff. There's a saying that we have around here at Services Power: just do hard stuff. And one of those hard things is being a champion and an advocate for somebody that we may not necessarily want to. Sometimes we have to step into the fire and pull some people out so that we can continue to be the people we need to be. Establish what we want to establish in the lives of the people that we're around. Some of us have made some mistakes. God knows I have. I haven't been a servant leader my entire life. But what we need to do is we need to pull ourselves back, pull ourselves up our bootstraps, do some hard stuff by knowing what it is that makes them the best that they could possibly be, or asking that tough question, just as Joon was saying, hey, what is it that your goal is? Can I help you get there? And take some of the ridicule, take some of the bad looks, even take some of the time of mistrust that's going to be evident and real in that space where you have to build the trust back and get back to that negative space. It's very important for us if we're going to continue to be the positive and infectious servant leaders we want to be. Now, quite honestly, Joon, servant leaders, at the most part, they're not necessarily, if they're real good servant leaders, and if they're growing to this place, we're all trying to get to the place where we're not wanting to really necessarily get ahead, but they all want to give back. Can you talk about some of the personal advantages of the whole mindset of getting ahead so that it could bring a person who's devoted to service to others to the place of getting back? I think that is such a cool concept. Would love if you could talk about it specifically towards servant leaders.
Yeah, I mean, let's break down the version to the getting ahead part. And I think most people learn early, like, you shouldn't be greedy, right? The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. So it's interesting. It says the love of money, not money itself, the active pursuit of it, or like the idolization of it. And so I had a mentor explain it to me like this. She said, Joon, here's the deal. Joon, 10 years from now, are you going to be better at what you do, like solving problems, helping people? Yeah. And she's all, if everything goes well, aren't you going to have more resources 10 years from now? Yeah, absolutely. So 10 years from now, you're going to have more resources and more knowledge and skills and wisdom and experience to tackle even bigger problems, like even more challenging problems, help people in even more dire straits. It's like, yeah, I think so. She's like, well, the problem is the way you're doing it right now, you're not going to be in business in 10 years. So you're not going to be able to help those people. You're not going to be able to take on bigger challenges. That was like a gut check for me to say, like, I think of it as sustainability, not about greed, right? Is that if I cannot figure out a way to grow my reach and influence by being successful, then I can't help even more people. And it's interesting, like, the American dream is all about become like successful and then like call it a day and then just sip like, mojitos on a cruise somewhere. But I was raised with like a different role model where you look at like the older and wiser you are, the more responsibility you take. Your shoulders are broader, you're stronger, you're more wise. But, my dying day, I'll probably have more responsibilities that day than I had when I was a kid or whatever. So I don't really believe in that American dream trajectory as much, but I just believe like, because leaders, like if the better leader you are, there's harder problems out there that require even better leaders, right? And so the only way you can stick around long term, though, to be that effective leader for these huge problems down the line is, are you successful enough to like not worry about your bills, for instance? Or like, I know a lot of people, they want to give all this money to charity, but they don't make a lot of money in their business. Right. And so you're like, okay, well, that's a lot of wishful thinking. I'm not about good intentions and wishful thinking. And that's kind of why I wrote the book for myself. There's got to be a point good intentions and wishful thinking actually produce real results that actually do make the world better. The world's not going to get better just because I want it to be better. It's going to get better because people like you and me, Lyle, have the leadership, experience, strength, and resources with us to make a difference. That's the way things change. That's only going to happen if you're still in the game long term. And so that's why the get ahead part is really important to me. There's a lot of people that just want to do good things, right? Today, Lyle, if I gave you everything I had, then where am I tomorrow? But if I consistently being successful through generosity, you're kind of reinforcing yourself. The more success you have, the more generous you are. The more generous you are, all the research shows that you're going to be more successful. Like, if Lyle, if you and I were in some kind of competition, like say running for office, or say we run like rival coaching companies or something like that, right? And say you were known in the community for being very generous and I wasn't. Research shows that the average person, all things being equal, would say that you're probably a better leader. You're just more successful than I am, because those are the kind of people that have the luxury to be generous, right? So like they've done these research studies on like households that are even just like charitable giving. Households that start the same income level but give charitably, they end up lapping the other family who doesn't give charitably. Within 3 years, they're lapping them by like twice as much income and all. It's just phenomenal how it works. But I think a lot of it is because you're practicing success that then is help. It's like what they call like a virtuous cycle. Like my success lets me be even more generous. And then I see like how I love the results of that. So it drives me to be even more successful. And then I can be even more generous. And then it drives me to be even more successful. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
That is such an incredible concept, and I hope that servant leaders are really listening deep to this portion and part of the conversation, because this is not about being selfless to the point of you getting nothing. It's not about what you get, but it's how much opportunity we have to give. And getting ahead gives us the opportunity to give even more, and it makes us a much more effective servant leader. Now, when we're getting ahead and we're being successful and we're looking at what people do, a lot of times it's all about copying what is being done successfully already, not reinventing the wheel, not making things harder than we want to make them. However, when we mimic people, we end up mimicking their attitudes, their behaviors, the way they think, and the way they believe, because the prevailing thought is, as what you were talking about, Joon, stepping over people and making enemies of the people that we want to get around and get over. How do we overcome the urge to do all of that and become successful at serving authentically?
Yeah, I mean, that's a legitimate question, right? The more successful you are. So listen, like, when I was in college and I was successful, that wasn't like world changing, like life changing money, right? So there wasn't like all these temptations and stuff like that. I'm successful now. You're talking gobs and gobs of money that like, oh, I could definitely hold on to this to myself, and, no one's going to begrudge me because I'm the one who made it and all this kind of stuff. I think there's different language for it. There's like the moral compass or your North Star. My version of it is I was studying the way like monks from way back in the day, they have a thing called the rule of life, where they basically saying instead of life pushing you around and you just reacting to the way life is, which is kind of what you're saying, is like if you're in an environment with super selfish people or materialistic people, you're going to respond to that. But they're saying, no, don't respond to it. Be proactive. So the rule of life is like you say at the end of my life, what do I want to be known about to the people that matter most to me? Right. So I had this thing every day on my Google Calendar, it repeats, and then I read it and I delete it for the day. And then the next day it shows up again. Right. And the first thing on there, it says, remember my future me. So, Lyle, you and I are married. So the wedding ring is not a magical ring. It is supposed to just be a reminder that today I'm going to act like I'm married, like I care about my wife. There's no like magic inherent power that like keeps you from being like wayward or like being mad at your wife and all that kind of stuff. But there's every day is a decision you got to make. So like every day I wake up, I click on that calendar reminder and it says, Joon, remember the future me. And so like, you and I, we speak on stages and stuff. At the end of the day, there's probably a lot of people going to come to our funerals and say great things, but they're going to say great things based off of like 30 to 45 minutes that I think you could be like a total jerk and hold it together and look good like 30 to 45 minutes, right? But what happens, life is all behind backstage, right? And off the stage. And so for me, there's only like 8 people I care about. When I die, I care about what they think about me. And so today I'm either getting close. There's no neutral days. I'm either getting closer or farther away from that person. That's the reality. And so every single day I remind myself, oh, Joon, remember the future Joon. Who do I want to be when it's all said and done? And so, I might never get there, but the point is I'm getting closer, right? And some days I can tell like, yeah, I definitely was not that guy today. So then, you rub some dirt on it and try again the next day. But, I was taught there's a book called Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis. And I reread this book probably once a year, but there's a concept in there that says like, the best thing you can do as far as being like staying true to who you are is that the moments when you're high in life, you're successful, you're stress free, make some decisions like the peaks of life that you're going to adhere to and stay like accountable to in the valleys of life. Right. And so that's why you have a moral compass. purpose. That's why you have a North Star. That's why you have a future me, is that you sit down and carve out some time in your life. I spend 2 times a year, I go on a retreat just for myself to go, is this the life that I want? Right. And if it is, you write that down and just remind yourself about it. So like you find peaks in your life, and during those peaks, you make decisions that you're going to live by. When it gets dark, your perspective changes and things feels desperate, and you want to stab someone in the back, or you want to be more selfish. But you go, you know what? When I was at my high, this is the stuff I said I wanted to be. And at my lows, I'm going to stick by that because, that was a different perspective, and I'm going to stay by the better perspective. So it's just a little trick that I do for myself every day. But I think we can all be like that, right? Little things like that.
That is such great advice. Servant leaders, we want to make sure we stick with that North Star. We want to make sure that we stay true to who we are at our core. We want to ensure that the people that love us most are the ones that celebrate us the deepest. Hey, Joon, how can people who are listening to this podcast, who are super excited about competitive buoyancy or excited about getting ahead to give back, how can they connect with you? How can they learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, a super simple way is just find me on LinkedIn, Joon S. Han. I think there's only one of me there. If they don't want to connect, because they're not, some people are shy because their profile is not built out, whatever, they can still just follow me, and they can always get the announcements like when the book comes out later this year, or if I'm in their part of the world speaking. Like I said, with like awesome guests, they can check that out too. And that's just really just built for people who want to just showcase kind of what makes them unique, whether it's their lifestyle choices, their religion, their sexuality, their hobbies, or unique message they have.
Thanks so much, Joon. Thanks for your time. We really, really appreciate it, man. It was a great time, great podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it was my privilege, man. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Servant leader, replace business or entrepreneur with whatever it is that you're passionate about. Joon was talking about what he loves, which is business and entrepreneurship. But the whole idea of getting ahead to give back can be whatever it is that you are passionate about, wherever you are living, wherever your space is. Replace those two words, business and entrepreneurship, with that. And if we put ourselves in positions to get ahead in those areas, in the places that we are most equipped, and we are able to give back more, we can be successful. What is your definition of success? How do you define your best life? Well, whatever that is, you're going to do your best to get ahead in that area so that you can give back. You can get some competitive buoyancy in that sphere of life. Wherever you are influential, you want to have the type of lifestyle that people could look back and say, we want that individual to be successful. And the only thing that does for us is put us in positions that we can do more for others. And ladies and gentlemen, we want to do more for you, servant leaders. Would you hit us up at hello@servicespower.org. Connect with us wherever you're listening to this thing at. We want to be successful, and success to us is having 100,000 conversations. So we need those 100,000 subscribers. So cool that you guys are on this train with us as we roll into 2019. We want to see you at the very next stop. We're honored to serve.